Good morning, good evening, or good night, whichever one it is for you. Whichever one it is, I'm very glad you're here to join me for this week's video, because today I decided I want to talk to you about my physical TBR, which is right next to me. I put them here, and as you can see, this is quite the stack I got going here, which is the first time in a very long time that I have these many books physically to read, which I just love so much. It means I have all of these options, and they're all books I'm very excited about reading. So it's the perfect time to share this with you. First of all, I do have 3 books next to me that I'm currently in the middle of reading. I won't get into those at all because the next video you're gonna see is the wrap up for this month, and so there I'll talk quite extensively about these, so there's no point in repeating myself twice. But for scientific accuracy, I will shortly, very quickly, very concisely tell you the titles. First of all, I have The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. This is the one I'm reading on audio, or listening to, I guess, technically. I am this far into it, and yeah, it's a nice book so far. Then I'm reading Howard's End by E.M. Forster, which is such a good book. I'm really enjoying this one. It's one of a few of his on my TBR, just a little heads up for later. Yeah, so that's Howard's End. Oh yeah, and I am this far into that one. And the last one I started yesterday. It's Fairy Tale by Stephen King, which I have a very strange relationship with Stephen King books, because at first I thought I really didn't like him, but I just keep wanting to pick his books up. I will get into these moods where he's all I want to read, and currently I am in one of those moods. I think it's because university is starting back up this month, and so I'm really nervous for that, which is why I want to read stuff that feels like an escape, and nothing feels like an escape the way Stephen King books do. And so all I've been wanting to pick up are Stephen King books. So this I luckily did own already, so I started this one. And I have ordered 2 more, which is Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining, which I read last year. And that's the one I'll read after this, the Stephen King I'll read after this. And I also have Mr. Mercedes coming to me, which is the first of the trilogy that's out in that series. And I'm so excited about that one too. So those are gonna be here soon. And technically they are on my physical TBR because they're set to arrive in like 2 or 3 days. So just pretend you're seeing them here. That's Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Those are the 3 I'm in the middle of currently. And now that we have that out of the way, I can start talking about the ones that are on my actual proper physical TBR, which first of all, this is maybe the highlight of this whole video. It's Voices of the Fallen Heroes by Yukio Mishima, which is the only fictional piece of writing I have not read by him. The only other thing by him I haven't read is Sun and Steel, which is more of an autobiographical essay, you could say. I do not own that one because I don't want to read those, then I have nothing left, and Mishima is my absolute favorite author of all time, so that'll be a sad day. But yeah, Voices of the Fallen Heroes is a collection of short stories that he wrote in the 1960s. And they have never been published in this way before. This is a very new collection. I think it came out in January, and I pre-ordered it because I love him so much. But yeah, I have not read it yet because Mishima is someone I really savor. This is gonna be so special, but for now I'll keep myself from reading it just to have something to look forward to. And yeah, that is Voices of the Fallen Heroes. Also, you'll notice in this video, I barely know anything about the books I want to read because I like knowing as little as possible. So this video won't be the most helpful in terms of plot summaries or something. I did try my best to give you a bit of an idea, but I don't know much, so I won't be able to tell you much. But just for curiosity's sake, I think it's still interesting to talk about these books. Next up, what do we have here? Oh, it's The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. I read The Count of Monte Cristo recently, and so of course I need to read the other Dumas stories because I fell in love with his writing. And The Three Musketeers is iconic, so of course I needed to read this. It's a story about D'Artagnan, who comes to Paris to work for the elite guard of the king. And he becomes involved with these three friends who call themselves the Three Musketeers. And he also falls in love, and apparently he just becomes involved in this world of crime and murder and deceit, and it seems very dramatic. I probably will pick this up next month because I just can't wait. I need to know what it's about. So yeah, that's that. Next up, we have Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, which I sort of collected all of their works recently. Not entirely all of them, but most of the major ones, because I watched all of these documentaries about the Bronte sisters, and I had only read Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. That has changed now. I've since read quite a few of their works, and as you saw, I'm in the middle of The Professor. But Shirley is one of the ones I have not read, but that I now do own because I got really curious about the Bronte sisters suddenly. Shirley is apparently a very interesting story and unique among the Bronte works because there is not one main protagonist. It's about a collection of people, you could say. There seems to be this one guy, Robert Moore, who is a manufacturer who has financial difficulties, and because of that he decides maybe it would be a good idea to marry this Shirley girl who's apparently fairly wealthy, and she's also very independent. It's apparently set during the Napoleonic Wars. There's a lot of class conflicts, there's a lot of political commentary, and I'm very intrigued by it. Quite the fascinating premise, that is that. Now, surprise, surprise, we have another Charlotte Bronte. This is Wilde, which is her last ever book, the last book she ever wrote and published, and it's also her most autobiographical book. This is about Lucy Snow, who is all alone in the world and who takes a ship to England to become employed there at a girls' boarding school in a small town called Wilde. I'm always very interested to read an author's last work because usually I start with those. I think it's very fascinating to see sort of the culmination of all of their skills and all of the things they've learned throughout their careers as authors. And for Charlotte, when I read Wilde, I will have read everything else she's wrote. That'll be a very interesting kind of perspective to go into this story. Then we have Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. The main character of this story is called Agnes Grey, and her family has financial difficulties, and so she decides to start work as a governess. That came with a lot of difficulty, and this story is basically Anne commenting on that difficulty of the position of an unmarried, educated woman for whom working as a governess was really the only acceptable job you could do. They were paid very badly, and apparently governesses had this really difficult life because they weren't quite the servants. They weren't part of the servants in a family, but they also definitely weren't part of the family, and so it was a very, very lonely life and a very badly paid life. I am very interested in seeing what Anne has to say about this because she was a governess herself. Anne's first work, I'm very curious to see what that's going to be like. We have A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. It's about this woman called Lucy Honeychurch, very good name, who visits Florence with her cousin. And it's about forbidden love and all of these, I don't know, there seems to be a lot of chaos going on and a lot of conflict, inner conflict. The writing is apparently beautiful. I read one quote of it once and that made me decide I really want to check out E.M. Forster. That was A Room with a View. Very, very interested in that. I keep saying that. English is not my first language, so excuse that, please. Then we have The Happy Prince and Other Stories by Oscar Wilde in the beautiful Macmillan Collector's Library editions, which I absolutely love. This is, as far as I know, a collection of fairy tale-esque stories. They seem to be more magical in theme. I don't know if they're children's stories or not, but I thought it would be really, really fun to have these little like bedtime stories almost. I think I will be reading these as bedtime stories. It's Oscar Wilde, you can never go wrong with him. That is that. Next up, in the same editions, but this time it's The Importance of Being Earnest and Other Plays, also by Oscar Wilde. As you can see, they are plays. The quote on this one says, "I am sick to death of cleverness. Everyone is clever nowadays." Very true, very true. Again, it's Oscar Wilde. I've never read a play by him, and I'm very interested to see how his plays are. Generally, I'm not a play kind of person. I like Shakespeare, but that's basically all of the knowledge of plays I have, except for like the classic German plays I had to read in school. This is gonna be an interesting thing. I don't know if I like this, but I like Oscar Wilde, so I'm expecting to at least like it somewhat. We'll see. Next up, we have a mammoth of a book. This is The Collected Poems of Emily Dickinson, which I have been wanting to read for so long because I love the show Alias Grace on Netflix. They use quotes in the opening scenes of their episodes, and there was one where they quoted a part of an Emily Dickinson poem, and I've never forgotten that one. It goes, "I felt a cleaving in my mind as if my brain had split. I tried to mend it seam by seam, but could not make it fit." And I love that so much that that single quote is why I want to read everything this woman has ever written. I have also watched a lot of documentaries about this woman because I find her fascinating. The fact that she basically, from a certain point onwards in her life, never left her home for like the last 15 years of her life or something. That's kind of crazy, but could be me. I won't lie. She was apparently a very special kind of poet because she was different. She did something different with poetry than what other people were doing at the time. I have no idea. I'm not that educated about poetry. I don't read that much poetry, just like with plays. But I am very excited. After I've read this, I'll be quite a bit more educated on poetry, I think. We'll see when I pick that one up. You will see, don't worry, I'll talk about that one a lot, I think. Then we have another E.M. Forster, which is Maurice. This is a very special story because E.M. Forster wrote this in 1914, but it was only published in 1970, after his death. Which is because this is basically about two men who fall in love in college. But it's much more than a love story, it's also very much social commentary of the time. E.M. Forster was gay, and that is why this book was never published, because at the time that would have been potentially very dangerous for him to come out as himself in the world of that time. I'm very curious to see how this is written and what kind of focus the story has. I've stayed away from any kind of spoiler. I'm expecting to love that one as well. We have Nocturnes by Kazuo Ishiguro, who, if you've been following along, I don't know, if not, maybe check those videos out, but I recently went on this whole little Ishiguro binge where I read like 7 books by him back to back. And this and The Buried Giant are the only ones I have not read. The Buried Giant I do not own, but I will read that eventually. Nocturnes is a collection of 5 short stories, I'm pretty sure. And since it's a collection of short stories that I have not read, I'll just read this little thing for you, which says, "Gentle, intimate and witty, this quintet is marked by a haunting theme, the struggle to keep alive a sense of life's romance even as one gets older, relationships founder, and youthful hopes recede." Okay, cool. I'm someone who really likes short stories, so this is gonna be a really nice little read, I think I'm expecting. That is Nocturnes. Next up, we have Yasunari Kawabata's The Rainbow, which is, again, an author. Kawabata, first of all, look at him. Look at this face. Can you not love this face? This is the cutest man I've ever seen. Like how he goes like this. Okay, Kawabata is a very, very simple writer. I would say he's a typical kind of writer in terms of Japanese literature. At first, I did not know if I liked him at all, but then I fell in love with his writing because to me, the way he writes, it's very simple, but it's so visual. it reads like a movie, the way he writes. These stories come alive in a way that is so unique to Kawabata, and that really makes you realize why this man won the Nobel Prize of Literature. He's incredibly talented, and his stories are always so quiet and so understated, but there's such a comfort in them. I look forward to this one a lot. It's about three half-sisters living in post-war Japan, where it's set just after the Second World War has ended. And it's about the conflicts of the society in Japan at the time, and of course the private lives of these three sisters. So I just know it's Kawabata, and so I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. That's all I have to say. Basically, Kawabata is the kind of author where you name drop him and I'm gonna buy the book. All right, next up. Oh, collect yourself, madam. Between the Acts by Virginia Woolf, who is my favorite female writer of all time. This woman's brain is insane. I cannot explain to you how much I love her stories. This story takes place in a country house in the heart of England on the eve of the Second World War. And it's about this group of people who are in that country house on that day, and I do not know anything else about it. Virginia Woolf, above anyone else, is just someone, I trust this name completely. I know whatever this woman writes I'm gonna love, so I never do any research. I see her name and I buy the book. It's never failed me. So yeah, that's Between the Acts. I will be able to tell you more once I've read it. We're just gonna get the Virginia Woolfs out of the way because I have those three together. This is The New Dress and Other Stories. It's a collection of short stories by Virginia Woolf, which I love this woman's short stories. They're so good and so inventive. And yeah, I cannot tell you anything about these because I do not know anything about these. I do not want to know anything about these. I will tell you about these once I've read them. But for now, just know I have them. I'll read them. I'll report back to you when I do. It's Virginia Woolf. What else can you say? Then I have Night and Day. This was the second ever novel Virginia Woolf wrote, and so it was written during a time in her career where she wasn't yet experimenting as much with words as she did later on. And so this is more of a traditional kind of novel. All I know about this story is we're following four friends. There's unrequited love, there's marriage plot, there's love triangles, there's broken relationships. Sounds very dramatic. That is Night and Day by Virginia Woolf. Now, oh goodness, just you wait. We have Thomas Mann. This is Der Tod in Venedig, which in English is The Death in Venice. I recently read Buddenbrooks. I really like Thomas Mann. I think if you have the privilege of being able to read a story in its original language, I think you should always do that because there's just so much that gets lost in translation. I think this is going to be the perfect little thing to read on the train rides to university. This is about Gustav Aschenbach, who's a writer, and he goes to Venice, and while in Venice he has this relationship, this sort of entanglement with a man or a boy, I don't know. It's a young man, I guess. I'm gonna see in what way this is just a love story or a very unethical kind of involvement going on there. We'll see. While he's in Venice, there also is a cholera that breaks out. So I expect there to be a lot of social and political commentary because that's usually what Thomas Mann does. That is Death in Venice, or Der Tod in Venedig. The second and last Thomas Mann I have on this list is Dr. Faustus, which is Thomas Mann taking Goethe's Faust, the story of Faust, and being inspired by it to write about the outbreak of Nazism in Germany. This story was published in 1947, just after the Second World War ended. And so it probably was written during the time of the Nazis in Germany. It's a very heavy political and social critique of Germany at the time. It's his most controversial work, and it's the one I'm the most interested in because, of course, this is a huge part of German history. And to read it from an author who was living at the time, that's Dr. Faustus. Next up, we have the book that's been on this list the longest. This is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I heard a lot of very good things about this book and I bought it. And I realized I'm not very interested in the book, but now I own it, and so of course I'm gonna read it. We follow this family, the Buendia family, and the town they built and live in called Macondo. It's apparently this mix of magical realism and political story and commentary. I don't know, it's supposed to be a very, very unique story. And so I own it, I will read it eventually, and who knows, maybe this book will really surprise me. There's a potential that I'll really love this one, who knows. I will get back to you on that. Next up, we have World Light by Halldor Laxness, who is, again, one of my favorite authors. I've read a lot by this man at this point, but this one I have not. And I bought it in the winter, but I never got around to it because I was reading so many different books at that point. And now I just really want to keep it for next winter because it's an Icelandic author, and not all of his stories are set in the winter, but just it feels like the kind of story you want to read during winter. Unless I sort of get a little itch to read Laxness, I'm really excited about this one because we follow Olaf. He's a foster kid. He lives on a rural farm in Iceland, and he really wants to be a poet. And no matter what people say, no matter how he's scorned for that, no matter he's told that the life of a poet at the time in Iceland is a really, really tough life, he just really wants to be a poet and he doesn't give a damn about what people say. We just follow his life, which is usually what Laxness does. He takes a main character, he brings you along on this character's life journey. And what I really like about Laxness is none of his stories feel the same because he takes this main character and they're always very distinct and very unique characters. And the entire story will be told in the voice of this character, meaning that if this character is a very disillusioned and unhappy kind of person, like in Independent People, the entire story will be told through that lens. This is told from this perspective of a poet or an aspiring poet. And what I love about Laxness, among other things, is how much he loved poetry. And so to read a book where the main character, where the perspective you're reading from is a poet, I know I'm gonna love this one. That is World Light, one of the highlights of this little video. And now we're almost done. The last books I have on here, I'm just really quickly gonna mention because they're all kind of, in my head, they're all connected. These are Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth, The Fall of Numenor, The Tale of Gondolin, Beren and Luthien, and lastly, The Children of Húrin. These 4 books I bought when I read The Lord of the Rings and The Silmarillion and The Hobbit, of course. I read those technically 3 books in the winter, and Tolkien is now one of my favorite authors. Surprise, surprise, this man is magic. He makes my inner child so incredibly happy. Oh yeah, I also read the Letters from Father Christmas by him. That's the first thing I read by this man, which is so weird. I did not start with Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I started with that one. Fell in love, bought the other ones, loved those. The Lord of the Rings is one of my maybe top 3 all-time favorite books ever. I will reread that this year, even though I've just read it. I love that book with a passion. And so I had to read The Silmarillion, which in my head is like the history book a kid living in the universe of The Lord of the Rings would read about its own universe. And these stories are different kind of tales told in The Silmarillion in detail. It's 1 book per story basically, and the little unfinished tales. And I cannot wait because I love history and I love Tolkien's writing and I love The Lord of the Rings. So of course I'm gonna love this one. It's a whole different kind of nerdiness unlocked inside of my brain. The history nerd in me, the literature nerd in me, the creativity nerd in me, they all feel very overwhelmed at this opportunity I have to really delve into and study this world I fell in love with. But these are ones I will keep for the winter because I need magical books in winter. And what better thing than these books? And I'm gonna read these right before I reread The Lord of the Rings, which in my head is just the perfect time to read those. I'm so happy. One more thing, because I just realized there was one book I completely forgot because I kept it in a different kind of place. I have this shelf for unread books, but this was not on that, so I nearly forgot it. It's The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I loved The Night Circus, which I read in December. I loved her writing. I loved that story. So I decided I want to read this next winter because I noticed this winter I was really lacking magical stories. That's just the sort of thing I want to read in winter. And so I bought all of these books in advance so I could be prepared for the next winter, even though it's not even really the spring yet. My brain is a strange little place sometimes. This, don't know anything about it. I heard I shouldn't know anything about it, and of course I complied because that's my pattern anyway. All I know is there is this quote here that says, "We are all stardust and stories," which sounds magical, it sounds fantastical, it sounds like just the right thing to read in December. So read it in December, I will. You're gonna have to wait a little bit until I tell you my thoughts on it. That was everything. Those were all of the books. They're all over the room now. So all you get to see are these Tolkien's. What a treat. Thank you so much for watching this video, for listening to me ramble about all of the books I have not yet read. This was like a little bit of a sneak peek of what's in our future, because these are mostly books I'll read in the next 1 to 2 months. Thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna see each other again very soon. Oh yeah, you're tired, bug, huh? Yeah, we're gonna sign off now, huh? So yeah. Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye-bye.